My name is Catherine Barron. My pronouns are she and hers, and I'm the Assistant Attorney General currently leading the Elder Abuse Task Force. Any opinions I express today are my own and not those of the Attorney General or the department. Today, we all have the distinct pleasure of also having two other Assistant Attorney Generals with us. They'll be monitoring the chat and helping out. Kristen Steindorf and Scott Elfelt. I must warn you, they're both prosecutors, so you should watch your P's and Q's. All right. Thank you for your interest in the task force and public service. It really is a privilege to talk with you, and I'm grateful for your interest in improving the lives of older adults. For those watching the tape, the participants today are the Tri-County, that's Clinton, Eaton, and Ingham counties. It's the Tri-County Area Agency on Aging. Big thanks to this group for allowing us to tape this event. So here's the roadmap for our travel together today. We're going to quickly cover how the task force was formed, the members, and how you can provide input. Most of our time today is going to be spent on the initiatives and how we determine and track these initiatives. I'll show you the resources we offer, and finally, how you can support our efforts if you are so inclined. Attorney General Dana Nessel is the driving force behind the Elder Abuse Task Force. The Elder Abuse Task Force is one of many of Attorney General Nessel's current initiatives. This is the current initiative list, and you can find this list and additional information on each initiative on the Attorney General's website. That's mi.gov/AG, and just click on initiatives. At the time this was taped, that's March of 2020, there were 16 initiatives. The Elder Abuse Task Force was launched in March of 2019. As I mentioned, it's led by Attorney General Nessel and the Michigan Supreme Court. We have over 100 members and more than 55 statewide organizations are represented on the task force. We are initiative accomplishing, not report writing. What does that mean? Most task force write a report, put it on the shelf, they're done, they move on. That's not what we're doing. We don't intend to write a report. We intend to accomplish initiatives, and we'll cover those initiatives in a little bit. First of all, here's how you can access a current list of task force members. From the Attorney General's Elder Abuse homepage, and you go to that homepage by entering mi.gov/, you select the Elder Abuse Task Force. That will take you to our Elder Abuse Task Force homepage. Currently looks like this. When you watch this tape, it may look a little different. At any rate, when you scroll down, you will see members of the task force. These are live links to each member organization's website. So you can provide input through these members. Alternatively, you may provide written input to the task force by emailing ag-pa@michigan.gov. So let's talk about our initiatives, how we identify and track them. Our first initiatives were based on recommendations from previous statewide task force reports. So the reports that were written and put on a shelf, we took them off the shelf, we read them, we went through them. With experts, we decided, okay, based on what's happening now, what initiatives should we adopt from those last two statewide task force reports? Additional initiatives are following up on our previous initiatives, and we update them through our Task Force Initiatives Committee. Publishing and tracking our initiatives is very important. We're all about transparency. And again, you can see our initiatives at mi.gov/elder abuse. You select the Elder Abuse Task Force. Again, the homepage that you see looks like this. And our initiatives currently right now are under resources. Again, transparency is important. We're going to continue to publish our initiatives and check them off when we've accomplished them. So let's take a look at our first 9 initiatives. You see 1 and 2 are checked. Number 1 is adopt a standard vulnerable adult incident report form for investigators and develop training for law enforcement prosecutors, adult protective services workers, and the Michigan Commission on Law Enforcement Standards. So we did accomplish this initiative. The vulnerable adult incident report form that you see on this slide is available on our website, and we have conducted comprehensive training on this. So let's look at number 2, mandating reporting for banks and credit unions on suspected financial fraud or exploitation. This is the Financial Exploitation Prevention Act. You may hear us refer to it as FEPA. We accomplished this second initiative in late 2020 when the Financial Exploitation Prevention Act was passed. You see that enrolled Bill 464. So it's important that we not only pass the law, but that we educate it on the law. And we have a separate presentation explaining the law. So here are just some fast facts about FEPA. We say that fast a few times. And then I'll give you a slide that shows how you can access our full presentation. So it was effective on September 26th of last year. As I mentioned, it requires financial institutions to report financial exploitation of vulnerable members or customers. And it also allows financial institutions to freeze transactions or assets under certain circumstances. Now, this is just the Cliff Notes version. That's not going to allow you to pass the FEPA test, but we have a full presentation. For requests for this presentation, you can email this email address. That's Kristen that I mentioned, who's also on today. When you do that, give her an idea of the audience, the number of participants, the format, whether you want it virtual or in person. We really encourage the virtual. It's easier for us to do that. After all, she's a prosecutor. We prefer that she be in court prosecuting these criminals. And so if she can push a button and show up at your place, it preserves our scarce resources. Also give a date and time. Be as flexible as possible. We may combine you with other groups that are interested. All right, let's get back to our first initiatives, our first 9 initiatives. So the balance of these initiatives are going to refer to guardians and conservators. And 3 through 9 are really aimed at the probate court process in the appointment or activity, as I mentioned, of guardians and conservators. If you're watching this video after March of 2020, you may wish to stop the video so you can read each initiative carefully, or better yet, go to our website to see if the initiative is now checked off. We expect our first initiatives to be accomplished by the end of the year. So, since our initiatives talk about guardians and conservators, let's take a step back, and so that we're all on the same page, let's quickly cover the responsibilities of guardians and conservators. So a guardian is a person or entity assigned by a court to oversee the welfare and safety. That's what's important there, the welfare and safety of an individual. A conservator, again, it can be a person or institution assigned by the court to handle the financial matters. All right, so guardian, welfare, and safety, think where they're going to live, you know, doctor's appointments, things like that. Conservator, money, property. Each of them has a legal duty to act in the best interest of the protected individual. Guardians and conservators, you may hear them referred to as a fiduciary. The same person or entity can be assigned to do both, or the duties can be assigned to different people. Let's also quickly cover incapacitated. So when does a court appoint a guardian or a conservator? There must be a finding by the court, by the judge, that the individual in question is an incapacitated individual, which means they are impaired by reason of mental illness, mental deficiency, physical illness, or disability. It could be the chronic use of drugs, chronic intoxication, or other causes, not including minority. And this is the important part, to the extent of lacking sufficient understanding or capacity to make or communicate informed decisions. Now, you may be asking yourself, who asked the probate court to appoint a fiduciary? It could be family, it could be friends, hospital, nursing home, an adult protective services worker. Any interested person may file the petition. Okay, so let's go back to our initiatives. Number 6, this addresses a guardian ad litem's responsibility. The guardian ad litem is an independent third party appointed by the court to inform individuals of their rights and report back to the court. So we want to make sure that these reports are standardized throughout the state, that they're good reports, and that both the individual who's alleged to be incapacitated knows about all their rights, that the guardian ad litem spends adequate time meeting with them privately with the vulnerable adult. We don't want them to meet really with anybody else present because that other person could be exerting undue influence. And we want a standardized, thorough, and objective report. All right, number 7 addresses protections for individuals when a professional guardian seeks to remove them from their home. So this includes requiring prior consultation with the ward when possible. That ward is the individual who's protected by the law, the incapacitated person. Consideration of supports and services that would allow that individual to remain in their current residence. And it requires professional guardians in most circumstances to file petitions seeking court authority to move the wards. And it requires courts to appoint a GAL or, where appropriate, legal representation for the ward, and to schedule hearings before authorizing moves to new residents. Number 8, establishing a clear asset and income threshold above which appointments of a conservator is required. So that's important because we don't want the courts appointing a conservator when it's just going to deplete the individual's very small assets. But if there are some substantial assets, we want not only a guardian, but a conservator. A conservator has some different requirements, needs to file yearly reports with the court. So that's important. Number 9. We're looking to improve basic standards for medical reports that are used in guardianship and conservatorship hearings. We want to make sure these reports are thorough, good. We can read the doctor, the medical professional's signature. We want them to be accurate, complete. It's just an important step. So all of these, the remainder of our first initiatives, are in House Bills 4847 through 4858. These were introduced in June of last year. The Senate introduced identical bills. And since then, we've been meeting with concerns, and we've been discussing and meeting with interested parties. These parties are referenced on the slide here. It's really good for us to get different perspectives. I think at the end of the day, we all want what is best for vulnerable individuals, and our different perspectives helps us appreciate how to get there. We've also listened to miscellaneous attorneys and members of the public. All right, so after we introduced the bills accomplishing the remainder of our first initiatives, we published our second set of initiatives. We made them public in a special edition of our newsletter. A little bit later, I'll show you how you can sign up for this newsletter. And so 1 through 4 and number 10 are non-legislative. So number one, the Court Watcher program, a little bit on hold now. We're also looking at maybe a Guardian Monitor program. Number two, though, we've accomplished. So it was important for us not only to pass FEPA, right, but we got to provide comprehensive training to implement the Financial Exploitation Prevention Act. Kristen Steiner's been instrumental in this. I've also done some presentations, as have other attorneys, Scott Teeter, for instance, in our office for the financial institutions, helping them recognize financial exploitation so they can report it. So we've checked that off because we really have educated thousands of individuals. As I mentioned, in addition to banks and credit union, adult protective services workers, law enforcement, prosecutors. I know Scott Elfelt, who's also on, has done some things for the prosecutors and other law enforcement. We've also accomplished, I'm happy to say, number 3 in our second set of initiatives, develop local level multidisciplinary teams by publishing updated protocols, identifying successful teams, encouraging mentorships, and facilitated productive collaboration. Yes, could we have stopped with just publishing the updated protocols? Absolutely. But is that what we're about? No. We not only want to put something out there, like FEPA was passed, we want to educate on it. These protocols are out there. Now we're in the process of and have identified many successful teams, and we're encouraging mentorships and facilitating productive collaboration. I'm also happy to report number 4 in our second set of initiatives has been accomplished. It was to encourage and facilitate probate court referrals of financial exploitation to local prosecutors by developing an easily accessible form. We've shared this form with the judges. As importantly, we've shared this with the probate registers. This was a collaborative effort, and so that's out there. So our second set of initiatives, as I mentioned, 5 through 9 are all legislative in nature. And again, it's not going to be enough to simply introduce the legislation. The law must be passed for us to check off the initiative. So family consent law that allows family members to consent to medical treatment, that's going to reduce the number of guardianships. This really has what we believe is some universal support. Visitation law, we want to tweak that a little bit to better protect legally incapacitated individuals' rights to communicate, to visit or interact with the person of their choosing. That's so important for our person-centered approach. Number 7, revise the power of attorney statute to increase acceptance and reduce fraud. Just this morning, Kristen and I were in a meeting with bankers, and we were talking about the importance of this particular initiative. All right, second set of initiatives, 8, revise the consumer protection laws to include criminal penalties for violations involving victims over 80 years old. And then we also want to increase the civil penalties associated with that. Number 9, provide statutory procedure for vulnerable adults to remove unwanted occupants from their home. This is another group that was very popular, kind of like the medical consent one, the family medical consent. Number 9, the statutory procedure for vulnerable adults to remove an unwanted occupant. It's something we're working on and have made quite a bit of progress. Number 10 is something our healthcare fraud division is working on diligently to accomplish. So I know I covered these initiatives quickly. And by the time you're watching the tape, we may have even published a third set of initiatives. You know where to go to find those. You can always check our homepage for the most up-to-date information. So let's talk about the Elder Abuse Task Force resources. Referrals, these are really important. We've got one great example of a positive referral. It came in through the Department of Civil Rights. We ended up sending it to the Michigan Elder Justice Initiative. It was an individual who's both blind and deaf. He didn't have a guardian or a conservator before he was attacked. He got unfortunately attacked. He went to the hospital, and then some people made some assumptions, as unfortunately able-bodied people often do, that, well, he must need a guardian and a conservator. And so the Michigan Elder Justice Initiative had to take it all the way to the Court of Appeals. Heather Catello did a great segment where she interviewed this individual, and it took y'all of about 5 seconds to go, oh no, this gentleman does not need a guardian. And it really was a travesty of justice that he had one. So there are some really good referrals that come through our collaborative process. The MDT templates and mentors, I mentioned that. That's a resource. If you're in an area that you want to start that up, contact us. Scott Elfelt in particular. Ron Tatro is also part of the with the Elder Justice Initiative, but he's on the task force. They will hook you up with really good mentors. Investigation, prosecution guidance, in particular, our Financial Crimes Division can guide local prosecutors. They're also working on some dynamite education. Speakers, I'm Exhibit 1. We have other exhibits of the speakers that we can also provide, and publications. Now, I'm going to slow down when I cover this publication, this resource, because it's outstanding, and we'd like your help on distributing it. It's the No Excuse for Elder Abuse Trifold brochure. Now, to the far left is contact information for various agencies who have a role in protecting older adults. So this is, all one place. And those contacts, for instance, and I know it's small on your slide, but Adult Protective Services, the Attorney General's Consumer Protection Division, Financial Crimes, Healthcare Fraud in the Attorney General's Office, Public Administration Division, that's where I work. And then Department of Insurance and Financial Services, the Bureau of Community and Health Services, Health Systems, that's in Laura. Licensing and Regulatory Affairs, etc. Michigan Long-Term Care Ombudsman, and even a reference to Counsel and Advocacy Law Line. That's where it's an attorney staff telephone advice, brief service, and referrals for seniors and low-income people. So that's all on this brochure, and it really is a dynamite brochure. The guts of the brochure addresses recognizing and reporting abuse, neglect, or exploitation. Now, I know I'm preaching to the choir, and I know you probably know that elder abuse is a vastly underreported crime. Statistics tell us that 1 in 10 individuals over 60 has been subject to some form of abuse. Wow. 1 in 10 individuals over 60 subject to some form of abuse. Now, that in and of itself is a travesty. It gets worse. Only about 1 in 24 cases gets reported. 1 in 24 cases gets reported. We all need to be more diligent. We need to educate ourselves on the signs of abuse and have the courage to say something when we see something. The brochure is available in Arabic, Mandarin, Spanish, and also sign language, American Sign Language. They're free, and you can order any reasonable volume by sending an email to this email address. It helps if you include your quantity and, of course, mailing addresses. We can't send them to P.O. boxes. Okay, all of our resources are available on our website. You've seen this before. mi.gov/elder abuse, the Elder Abuse Task Force, and then some resources we haven't talked about yet. Now you'll see our prevention and training modules are front and center. We've got the reporting area. We've got our newsletters. I mentioned the newsletters. If you haven't signed up for the newsletter, I encourage you to do that. In the news, for instance, there was a recent press release about this People v. Haynes case. Great case. Kristen prosecuted that case, and it's really established some great precedent for us. And then you see these prevention training modules. If you hit this view entire playlist, you'll see them all. There are 11 training modules that focus on recognizing, reporting and preventing elder abuse, neglect, and exploitation. Now, the primary audience is at-home caregivers for older and vulnerable adults. The information, honestly, though, is beneficial for the general public. I had a friend who watched these, and she said, should be required watching for anybody who knows somebody who's elderly. The sessions are between 3 and 7 minutes. I'll mention just a few and 1 through 5. So that person-centered support, minimizing the risk. Person-centered is something I'm sure you're used to hearing. Defining and identifying potential abuse, neglect, and exploitation, reporting, recognizing stressors. That's really a good one for any line of work that we do. Understanding stressors, and etc. You see here, modules 6 through 11. You can watch these in just over an hour, and they really, really are good. We have other resources on our website. Just last week also, we published a presentation on nursing home resident rights. So also available on our website are these publications I mentioned, the multiple disciplinary teams. If you're a professional working to combat abuse of older adults, you can get more done by joining or forming a multidisciplinary team of like-minded professionals. Now, I know today is Area Agency on Aging, but later, law enforcement, prosecutors, APS, you may be watching, and I want to give you a special encouragement to get the ball rolling in your jurisdiction. The most effective MDTs involve prosecutors, APS, and law enforcement. Communities are invigorated when they know law enforcement stands with them fighting elder abuse. As I mentioned, these protocols and all of our elder abuse task force resources are available. I know it's the refrain here on our website. Our online resources are growing, and very soon you're going to see other modules. We're excited about that. So, how can individuals help? How can you help? Well, first and foremost, right, the 1 in 10 and 1 in 24, watch for signs of abuse, neglect, or exploitation. Encourage others to watch for signs. Distribute this brochure. And importantly, if you or others see something, say something. Trust your gut. Report to APS. I tell the employees of the financial institutions that all the time. When somebody comes in and you feel like, something's not right here or something's off, trust your gut. I tell them, if you can only remember one thing from this presentation, again, I'm talking to the financial exploitation or the bankers and those staffing credit unions, trust your gut. So if you see something, say something. Sharing our resources, that's how you can help too. To support our legislation, calling or writing your rep or senator is a good start. Calling the chairs of the committee can also be helpful as well. If the bills are before, that is. If you're able, scheduling a session with your rep or senator in person for an in-person meeting in Lansing, or you could attend the reps or senators' coffee hours. That's also very good. Some argue the in-person is better because it's harder for the legislator to say no in person. So letters of support when the bills come up in committee are also encouraged. Writing opinion editorials, that's a little heavier lift, as is the social media campaigns, but they're all important and helpful. Now, I know I went through things quickly. I did that somewhat on purpose because I wanted to provide you with the opportunity to ask questions. So if you haven't already, you can type your questions in, and either Scott will pick them up or I will answer them. So as maybe you're waiting to type those in, or Scott's reviewing them, I'm going to give you some of the typical questions I get. Who are mandated reporters? Well, we have a presentation on that. So you can go to our website and there's a whole presentation on mandated reporters. Another question I get is related to scams that target the older folks. And you probably know some of these scams, but this is a short plug for our May 4th symposium. And if you're watching this after May 4th, the symposium should be taped and on our website. One of our presentations that morning is going to be on scams that target older individuals. I'm also often asked of, how do I keep track of scams, what the recent one is, how I should be helping my clients or those that I serve. One thing that I really like to tell folks in that regard is AARP has a podcast. It's called The Perfect Scam. It is an excellent podcast, and I suggest that you consider signing up for it. So I wasn't able to go to this slide. Let me try it again and see if I can. I have a slide on the perfect scam. Nope, looks like it's going to make me go to that slide here. So 50, whoops, skipped right over it. So it looks like this, Perfect Scam. It's an excellent resource. I actually listen to it pretty religiously, and the scams don't target just older individuals, can target anybody. The most recent one that I listened to, the second installment is going to be queuing up on Friday, targeted somebody in their low 30s with a business scam, and this individual took out more than $500,000 of loans for the Russian mob. So it's not just for individuals who are older. So this really is a good podcast, and I would encourage you to sign up for it and watch it. But again, we're going to have a presentation on May 4th targeting or helping the public understand what some of those scams are. And then the plan is in June to give some professionals some tips like this perfect scam and other things like freezing your credit report or dual factor authentication, things like that. So just a little preview on some of the things that we have coming down the line. I often get asked about the Ombudsman program. We're going to have a presentation on that as well. So I'm going to pause. I don't see any questions. Scott, Kristen, do you see any questions?
They're coming through, it looks like on the chat,
okay,
as opposed to on the Q&A. So I can just read through them if you want. Or
sure, why don't you read them and I'll do my best to answer them.
Okay, the first question comes from Jacqueline Lloyd. She asks, what % of that is inter-partner domestic abuse? That came earlier when you were talking about the number of vulnerable adult offenses and things like that.
Yeah, so the 1 in 10, I don't have a percentage breakdown for how much of that is inter-partner domestic abuse. We do know that is a component of elder abuse, and that can be a very tough one because obviously the victim is living with the other individual. So I'm sorry, Jacqueline, it's a great question. I just don't have that percentage breakdown.
And right with that, I think the answer is going to be similar, but Jennifer Cunningham asks, do you find that family members are less likely to report?
When you say less likely to report, I think sometimes there might be a fear of a family member who's observing somebody else, because it could be another family member who's doing the abuse. So it has a dynamic that's difficult. One thing that you can emphasize, and APS is also giving a presentation in May and then another one in June, but we really need to let people know when they report to APS, and the phone number is right there on the brochure, when they report to APS, that's confidential. APS does not let anybody know who was doing the reporting. So that is a confidential. So good question, and thanks for the question.
Marion Owen asked for a short explanation on what a professional guardian is.
Marion, good question, and a special shout out to Marion for letting us take this presentation for your group, and a thank you for your participation in the Elder Abuse Task Force. Marion's also doing a presentation in May on the resources that are out there. So a short explanation of what a professional guardian is. So when we refer to professional guardians, it's really a guardian who has set up a business, who that's how their business kind of makes the living. They are guardians for individuals. What will often happen is one of two things. Either there's nobody out there watching out for this poor individual, there's not family or friends, nobody willing to step up and be the guardian. So you have these professional agencies, bless them for providing this public service, that are appointed professional guardians by the court. They don't apply to be the professional guardian for an individual. They are appointed by the court. Other circumstances where professional guardians may be appointed is you have family members who are fighting so much that the court cannot find one of the family members is suitable and willing. They might be willing, but they're not suitable. And then they look to a professional guardian. The emphasis in our legislation really emphasizes that first and foremost, we want to look to the family members. They have priority. And if a judge is going to skip them, we really want the judge to put on the record why they're skipping that individual with priority. Great question, Marion, and another shout out for your participation in our task force.
The next question is part compliment and part question. Carl, I am so sorry.
We'll just call it Carl. That's fine.
Asks and says, it's great to hear the enthusiasm. It's truly appreciated. Is this information being shared with the hospital staff?
Yes, as a matter of fact, Scott Teeter, I mentioned Scott, when you said this information, he's done several presentations along with hospital employees of how to spot a vulnerable adult. One thing we learned for the People v. Haynes case, there's this common misperception out there that to be a vulnerable adult, you have to have some diagnosis of dementia or Alzheimer, and that's not the case. You can be a vulnerable adult without that diagnosis. And so, yes, we are sharing this information with all sorts of professionals. And the hospital staff is, in particular, one area that we're looking at. And precisely today, Carl, why we're taping this so we can have it available to hospital staff that may be working odd hours, so they can access this anytime on our website. So thank you, Carl.
This question is from Janelle Ingram. She asks, does Michigan consider 5 wishes as an accepted DPOA once the person is deemed unable to make their own decisions?
And good question, Janelle. So again, I feel like every turn of the corner, I'm plugging our May 4th, but Tracy Rowan on May 4th is going to talk about how to avoid guardianships and conservatorships. She has about 50 minutes to do it. She's an attorney, and one of the things she will talk about is filling out a durable power of attorney. Now, I'm not familiar with 5 wishes, but as long as it was executed when the person had capacity and follows what the DPOA rules are, it should be accepted. So that's a great question, Janelle, and I will look into that 5 wishes document so that next time I'm asked this question, I'm better able to answer it. Good questions, guys. Keep them coming if you have them.
Karen Smith asked, what can be done if Adult Protective Services is not responsive to a complaint?
Good question. First thing I do, Karen, is I'd attend May 4th and ask them that very question. What do you suggest we do if we perceive you as not being responsive? I would be persistent. I would give them as much written evidence that I could find and have. Sometimes it's tough because they may have more information than we do. And I think we'll all learn on this May 4th a little bit more of a perspective of how they see things. But I would be, I would be persistent, respectful, but persistent, keep good records and say, yep, I called you on this. This is what I'm seeing. This is why I believe the person's vulnerable. They should be reporting back to you. So I would say be persistent, Karen, and attend on May 4th and ask them yourself for how can I be a better reporter? Good question, Karen.
All right, and Catherine, I believe the next question is the task force reaching out to local religious organizations to educate regarding elder abuse?
That's a great question. We haven't specifically reached out to religious organizations, but we will be. We're going to be reaching out every which way we can. One of the reasons, again, we're taping today, and what we want to do with these symposiums and taping the symposiums, and I'm actually hoping relative to the scam aspect, we can even maybe have a model PowerPoint that others might be able to use. So we need to reach out in all directions, and I believe religious organizations are absolutely a good avenue to do that. We have reached out a little bit relative to distribution of the brochures, but for instance, if your church or synagogue is interested in having these brochures, we're happy to help you distribute them because they really are a good resource. So great question and suggestion. Thank you.
Now, the next question is, if someone has a power of attorney for a family member covering both healthcare and financial decisions, is that just as good as having a conservator and guardian appointed?
Well, it's probably better, because that was done when they had capacity. And again, Tracy will tell you when she does her presentation that that's one of the things that you want to do. You want to get a power of attorney. And lots of people say, oh, I've got, durable power of attorney. Okay, do you have it for healthcare? Do you have it for financial? This person's question is a very informed question, suggesting you need to have it for both. Now, the probate court is supposed to be asking, and the guardian ad litems are supposed to be asking, hey, does this person have a power of attorney for healthcare? Because if so, that person can be making the decisions relative to healthcare. And do they have a power of attorney, a financial one, And then that person could be making decisions that the conservator might make. Now, we can't provide legal advice, but I can tell you, I think Tracy's presentation on the 4th, and if you can't make it on the 4th, you can see the taped, goes through a lot of those different issues. So excellent and informed question.
And then to follow up on that question, can someone be a guardian or an activated durable power of attorney for a person if that guardian has been assigned a durable power of attorney?
Ooh, okay, I think I understand that question. So the question, I'm going to repeat it back. Can somebody be a guardian if they have an activated durable power of attorney for that person? The short answer is yes, but to help everybody understand what that question is, an activated durable power of attorney, we have to be careful about what we're talking about. Some durable power of attorneys, happen right away. The activated suggests that something has to happen before the power goes into effect. So it's possible that, say, I have a durable power of attorney for healthcare purposes for my mom, but for some reason I'm running into things and I'd like to become her guardian. I can petition for that. I may not need to if we have the durable power of attorney for healthcare. And again, the Attorney General's office does not provide legal advice. That's why you should attend on May 4th and get that legal advice and direction from Tracy. But again, very, very well informed and good questions. All right, I think we have time for a few more.
Yeah, and I think the next question then is, can this information be shared with anyone at groups like senior dining sites, for instance?
Yeah, I mean, that's again why we're taping this, the power of sharing this information. And once we have it available by recording, there's no reason that a senior center after the evening meal can say, okay, here we go. Now, if somebody's in a senior center after the evening meal, that may be, I don't want to say too late. What we want are the senior centers when they come together and they're playing cards during the day and they have a special educational session. That would really be the best. But we only have so many people, and so that's why we're trying to tape these and make them available. But again, a great suggestion about working through senior centers.
And then I see that we have a clarification on an earlier question. So
Sure.
The question was essentially, if we have person A who is a guardian for person B, person A also has a durable power of attorney for herself because she needs help cognitively. So is it possible for someone who was named incompetent to be deemed a guardian for another person?
Yeah, that's not the best situation. So person A already has somebody that has a durable power of attorney for her, it sounds like, because she was either under the mental health code deemed incompetent or under EPIC, which is the Estates and Protected Individual Code, was deemed incapacitated. If that person has been deemed under one of those two laws as needing a guardian, probably they shouldn't be a guardian for somebody else. Now, if they have a durable power of attorney for themselves, now there can be really a lot of different reasons why you have a durable power of attorney. My mother, when she was, several years from death and with all of her mental faculties, did some estate planning, and she made me her durable power of attorney for healthcare and financial with one of my brothers as a backup. So the question is, just because she had a durable power of attorney for herself, does that preclude her from being the guardian, say, for my father or for a brother who may have gotten into an accident or have alcohol or substance abuse problems? No, It would not have precluded my mom from doing that. So you really need to look into what person A's situation is.
And
So
I believe in this case, the person who commented is concerned that both people were really considered incompetent, but one person was making decisions for the other person. The commentators also expressed some concern that APS really didn't take up this issue. And so to that end, do you have any suggestions for people who would like APS to take a second look at something?
Well, in this case, if there's a finding by a court of incapacity or incompetent, that should be a bit of, I don't want to say a no-brainer, but show that to APS, because if that person is serving as a guardian for somebody else, and then there's been a finding under the law that they're not competent or they don't have capacity, they shouldn't be making decisions. So I would say work with the court who made that finding relative to person A and give that information to APS. Again, that assumes I'm understanding the question right. And you could also, because anybody could be an interested person, there's nothing that precludes somebody who works for adult or for the Area Agency on Aging, certainly consult with your employer and your boss, but there's nothing that precludes them from bringing that to the attention of the jurisdiction who's placed B under guardianship with A being the guardian. Certainly they'd want to know that maybe another court has found A to be either incapacitated or incompetent. So that may be one that we want to talk about offline. Get with Marion and we can follow up on that. Great questions. Unless Kristen or Scott, you find a pressing question. I see we've reached we're very close to our hour limit. I want to be very, very respectful of the Area Agency on Aging's time to have invited us here. So any final questions before we wrap up?
No, thank you, Catherine. I believe we were able to address all of the questions presented.
Oh, what do you know? Victory. Again, I want to thank Scott Elfelt and Kristen Steinder for helping with this, for monitoring. You usually don't get 3 attorneys for the price of one, particularly when that price was free. We really are in the Michigan Department of Attorney General and the whole Elder Abuse Task Force. We're laser focused on helping you protect older adults, and we couldn't be more grateful about the work that you do. You're the people in the trenches and you're really making a difference. And if there's somehow we can help you do your job better, this Tri-County, you can go through Marion. Others, you can use that AGPA email box or any task force member. So on behalf of the entire task force, thanks for your time and keep up the great work.